Welcome to the 10th episode of Gen Z Investing Insights. Before we start, we're almost at 100 followers on TikTok, so go follow the TikTok below. We usually post highlights of these shows, which you guys are watching right now, but also clips of Elon, Zuckerberg, and Warren Buffett. But if you guys want to see other stuff, comment below, and we will post that. But getting started, last night I was a little confused because Russia had a coup going on. There's so many different psyops going on, so I don't really know what's happening. But allegedly, the guys that are trying to take over Russia have now turned back and have reached some agreement. But the first thing that came to my mind is how is this going to impact markets, not only in America, but internationally. And the first two things that came to mind is the oil futures getting affected and also energy stocks getting affected. How do you guys think that this situation is in Russia is going to impact markets domestically and internationally?
I think internationally, I think the whole little incident will just create volatility. I wouldn't really say that. I don't know what's happening. I don't think that 50,000 troops is really going to march against Russia. So I think it's just going to create volatility. However, I think that's something to watch out for would be like companies in the US like Lockheed Martin, like contractors, military contractors who where if we're like, okay, they're actually moving against Russia and we would support them, which I highly doubt we would. But if we do, their stock prices would shoot up. So that's something you could watch. But in my opinion, it's all just volatility.
Yeah, personally, I don't think it's gonna have any effect on the U.S. market just because prior to this, the U.S. did have heavy restrictions on Russian oil, and the only consumers of Russian oil, I believe, were maybe China for sure. I know, and then maybe India. I forget. There was one other country, but some Asian countries. So in terms of the U.S. market, I don't really foresee Russia's economy really having an impact on it. But in terms of international markets, I say. I think it will be interesting because I mean oil in Russia is their massive industry. It's really what makes Russia's economy. So it'll be interesting how it affects countries like China and countries like India, which are still dependent on Russian oil, and how the pricing on that oil will turn out. But I don't think personally, I don't think it's gonna even affect international markets that much. I don't really see too much of an effect from the coup.
Yeah, going more into India, like you were talking about, we did have a little meeting with India this week with Joe Biden and the leader of India. Do you guys think, as we get more into artificial intelligence and AI has a bigger effect on our day-to-day lives, do you think AI will change foreign policy at all?
I mean, I think anytime that you have something as disruptive as artificial intelligence, you're going to see a huge change in foreign policy. Just because, we talked about this in previous podcast, so make sure to watch those. But in terms of AI, it's just this technology in which some of the richer countries that are developing this AI and have the companies that are like Nvidia, Microsoft, even China with all their AI, you could definitely see how the disparity that is coming from AI and how different it affects different countries. So I think it'll be interesting, but I think there's going to be even more of an divide than we see now through AI.
I think just like there's so many different like problems with like it's foreign relations is such a tricky thing. And I think if that process is able to be automated, like if one country had some kind of intelligence where it understood the country's positions on a multitude of topics and their opinions on really micro things, that if it would be so interesting to see what would happen if you had two intelligences uh try and decide on certain topics and see how that like fizzles out on certain problems. Like if America had an artificial intelligence and so did Russia, and we were debating over nuclear warheads, how artificial intelligence would come up with a solution to that problem. I think that could be a solution in like 20 years.
Yeah, I agree with you, Jacob. I think that AI would be like advisors. I don't think that they'd make like decisions or anything like that. I think the big thing about politics is emotions. Like you get elected by playing into people's emotions and really motivating them to go out and vote. But I don't think that AI will have that big of an effect because so much of what presidents and world leaders do is lead by emotion. So I do think the AI would be like an advisor. However, I don't think it'll have that much impact on world affairs.
I think so. This is where I'll kind of question a little bit here, and I think AI. Yeah, I agree. I don't think AI is going to be significant in the future at all in foreign policy, and the reason is because I think a lot of foreign policy is based on certain political interest, and that's why we see like a lot of corruption happening in a lot of developing countries, and even in some of the more developed countries even further. So I think like it's so AI, I think is really good at making a general opinion. I think as Jacob, you were saying, it's really good at coming like to a consensus and like getting this knowledge quickly. But it's a matter of whether it will benefit one side or the other side. And I think we're always like trying to I guess make a foreign policy. Each country is always trying to benefit themselves. So that's where you kind of have, a little bit of difficulty there, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think if you think about like our history, and if AI was at certain points in history, like if AI was a thing during the Cold War, or like during the Cuban Missile Crisis, like how would JFK's decision on how to treat the Cuban Missile Crisis change if he had an AI advisor? Would there have been a better solution? If in the 80s when or maybe it was the 80s, it was the 80s when the Berlin Wall fell, would that have played out differently if there was an AI advisor? I think that's something that will is a good thing to question. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point. But going back to what I said earlier, like, I mean, the whole Cuban Missile Crisis was a reaction to us putting missiles in Europe close to the Soviet Union, right? So at the end of the day, the whole point of sending nukes to Cuba was on emotion and on getting back at the United States. It wasn't really logical. It was more like, okay, you did this to us, we're doing this to you. And I don't think an AI would advise putting or creating more tension among countries. That doesn't really seem like a very, I don't know, logical thing to do, but it's all emotions. So I don't think that AI would change much. I think that we're already just so emotional and already so prioritizing ourselves as countries that AI would kind of just be like there, but it wouldn't really impact our thoughts or like how we conduct foreign affairs.
Yeah. I mean, that's an interesting point because it's like it brings up the other question of how far AI has grown. And I think foreign affairs like is something that has so many layers. And I don't think AI is there yet to like come up with like an effective conclusion to like a, some type of like the Russian Ukrainian war, for example, or something like that. I think there's so many layers to everything for every country, for every person, that it's just so complicated. And it's even like even people that study foreign policy struggle with this like so significantly. So it's like interesting like how an AI would like come with a solution, I guess.
I think it's true. I think AI can come up with so many solutions and options that it just keeps leaders more informed. I think that was the main point I was going for.
But you know, I
Um,
think it'd be pretty cool. What if there's like a simulation of all the countries, but they were like ran by AIs? Like, or what if there was just one AI that ran the entire world? I wonder, like, there's a simulation for that. That'd be pretty cool to look at.
there's like no emotions though, so it'd be like a
Yeah, I
utopia.
mean, it would just make the most logical decision. So I'm curious about how that would turn out if it was able to project 500 years in the future.
But if you were like to put input like opinions that were like really strong that were against another country, I don't think I think someone would get invaded. Like if Iraq had a certain policy towards Iran, would an AI decide to invade Iraq if it was Iran? I think that would be interesting in a simulation.
Yeah, I think also like would AI, I mean, I guess like in a simulation, like I mean, America is capitalist, right? But there's some like socialist countries. So how would like if AI is making logical decisions, what is logical to AI? Is equality, like equity, more logical, or is like I don't know. I guess like political beliefs. Like what is the most logical political belief that AI would go with? I think that would be something very interesting.
I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole here, but I think Jacob also brought a super interesting point and how like our how like we know war today is changing as well with AI. We're not gonna see, I don't think we're gonna see like the mass amounts of soldiers on the front lines as we've seen in previous. Like AI is gonna cause like the entire like idea of war and sacrificing tons of citizens to just like I think it's going to be like so much technology involved in war now. It's going to be absurd, and it's going to be actually quite dangerous because the weapons are just getting more powerful and powerful. But it's a whole another discussion, I guess.
You look at a company like Palantir, whose main customers are American intelligence and American military. They are going to influence the next wars so much. Their biggest programs and softwares are things that automatically control like I think it's called Airbus and a bunch of different like aero stuff. I don't know what the word is. And going into the future, so many things are going to be automated. If that's planes and jets, or that's tanks, or if that's robot dogs that are shooting at people, who knows? But I think going forward, automation is going to change war so much in that decision making, in that front line, and at home too. I think people who are manufacturing things won't have to, because that's what the robots are going to do. They're going to automate that manufacturing process.
I mean, obviously we weren't going down that rabbit hole, but that kind of reminds me of Fahrenheit 451, where they were like, I think it was Fahrenheit 451, where they were like constantly at war and like the citizens had no idea because it was all like automated. Like it's all AI. AI was the ones fighting the wars. And I kind of think that will that desensitize us to the real horrors of war, especially like if you're from a well-developed country, right? Like how like it's not like the Vietnam War where like people's sons are being sent off, but I'm sure atrocities would still be committed. So would that desensitize us as like a species? I think
Uh,
it's interesting.
Yeah, I mean there's that, but there's also the situation of nuclear warfare, and this is a whole other thing. And I think something I just read on recently was China upped its like nuclear weapons by like 100 or like it was like the most out of any country. So I think that is the scariest. That for me is even more scary than AI and everything that's coming with it is nuclear warfare, just because how dangerous that can be.
I think to Alex's point, it really just depends who has power. If the people have power and we stay to our social contract where it's a government for the people by the people, how does automation fit into that with a war? Does AI have power, or are the people really in power? And if so, then who is the one that is going to war? Is AI going to war with itself, or are the people going to war with themselves? And then to Pierce's point with how do nukes play in to AI? I think mutually assured destruction still goes into an algorithm, and I think AI doesn't have that power to press the red button. But I think it can still advise that of, hey, if we have no other options, then we're going to press the red button.
Yeah. Well, we might not make it to the age of 40. We'll see.
That'd be unfortunate, yeah.
Switching gears a little bit, talking about fighting. Elon and Mark Zuckerberg might have a fight. Who do you guys have winning?
I box a little bit, and so I think by a mile I'm gonna say Elon because the weight classes are so different.
No, I'm going Zuck.
It's a 230-pound man going against like a 180-pound
Yeah,
dude.
but I've seen clips of Zuckerberg. Bro, I think he's a black belt in Taekwondo.
I think
Something.
it's jujitsu. Dude,
Oh yeah, yeah.
have you ever like done jujitsu though? Like fought someone who does jujitsu?
No, I mean,
They like know how to control you. If you're on the ground, they'll knock you out in like a minute, bro.
yeah, but are they boxing or like what they doing? If they're boxing, I still think Zuckerberg's quick. He's quick on his feet. I mean, Elon Musk is 230, bro. I don't think he's moving like that.
But one hit from Elon Musk has taken out
Nah,
Zucker.
bro. Zuckerberg's gonna dodge him.
It's MMA though. So
Is MMA?
it's MMA.
Oh no, yeah, Zuckerberg 100%.
Dana White said he was talking to both Elon and Mark. So I might have it. I think I have Mark. I think he just has
Yeah, I have Zuckerberg, yeah.
I have
Hey, Pierce,
Elon.
let's bet on it. 25 bucks.
Bet on it. What are the odds? We'll have to pull up the
I
odds.
have no idea. Yeah, we'll have to pull up the
Mark is like minus 200.
Oh, Elon will train. That's one thing they don't have to worry about. They have the resources to get proper training.
That's true.
But do
Yeah,
they have the
maybe
time?
If yeah, I don't know if
well,
Elon
Zuckerberg
will
does
train.
probably more time than
Elon
Elon.
will
That's for sure.
train. Trust me, Elon always makes time. He doesn't sleep.
Dude,
Not for
Elon
his
would make
kids,
like
he
a
doesn't.
clone. He would make like a clone of himself to fight it and just like
Exactly.
optimize the fighting.
Exactly. Elon. I mean, he has the weight, he has the height, he has the reach. That's the biggest thing, I think, is he has so much more reach than Zuckerberg that it's gonna be hard for Zuckerberg to hit Elon because he's hella short.
Switching gears again. JPow talked this week. Markets have been doing great. They've been great the past 3 weeks. But JPow started talking about how there might be more rate hikes in this year. Do you guys think that we'll ever get back to that financial downturn that we saw with the regionals in March? Or do you think we're going to keep on going up?
I think there's a lot of optimism in the market right now. And I think that optimism will stay for a while. I think we'll only see a big downtrend or reversal if J Powell does raise again. I think that the overall consensus of the market is that we're done with rate hikes, and he's just kind of bringing it up. But I do think that we'll have a little pullback that we're seeing right now, and then we'll keep rallying until J Powell makes a decision.
I am kind of on the fence because I think that there's a lot of greed in the market right now. I think like that, like compare in comparison to like the crisis a few months ago with the regionals, that what it was a few months ago. I think we're experiencing a large period of greed, and I mean, I think CNN has a great greed fear index, and Warren Buffett has that famous quote, "Buy when the market's fearful, and sell when it's greedy." So I'm always like a big, I guess I kind of follow that, and I think right now like there's too much greed in the market, and I think the top like companies, top like top I don't know top 10 or even S&P 500, that those big companies are at the highest they've ever been. And I don't know if that's necessarily like, I wouldn't say they're supposed to be that high right now. And so I think we're going to see a little bit more of a downturn in the market and back to more reasonable valuations.
Yeah, I think that the market, as you highlighted perfectly, Pierce, it's driven by greed right now. And I think and until the next Fed meeting, it's going to continue to be driven by greed. I think you just have to look at any tech stock right now. You look at Tesla, it's at an all-time high, maybe. I think
Like
it's at
52,
260.
52 week for sure.
Yeah. I'm still mad about Tesla. I bought it at the beginning of the year at like $100, and then I sold it at 120, and now it's at 260. So that may be my worst trade ever. But keep it on topic. Keep it on topic. I think the markets are driven by greed right now, and unless we get consistent rate hikes and inflation um continues to grow and increase, I think the markets will continue to grow. But it really just it depends on inflation. Inflation. I think that's it.
And it's a matter, I think, as well of, I mean, we've had a lot of discussion on AI, but there's definitely a huge AI bubble right now out there. I mean, there's all any company that says they're associated with AI is going to go to all-time highs almost. Nvidia passed it at one point, what is it? It's like 1.05 trillion valuation. All these companies that have anything to do with AI. I mean, AI is going to have an impact, but I think it's very similar to what we saw in the dot-com bubble, where not all these companies are going to be benefit from AI. I mean, Jacob, I read your piece. You had a great piece on C3 AI. Some of these companies they're not gonna make it. Like they're not really that substantial in terms of the AI revolution, I think, and they're going up pretty significantly.
If you want to read my piece, it's going to be in the bio. But I think Pierce is correct. I think not every company is going to be affected by AI, but the software companies are going to keep on continuing to grow. But you don't want to leave behind the other industries. I think industries like manufacturing who are not towards chips, but more towards gasoline and cars. I think what is Ford stock going? I saw something about Ford. I wonder how Ford is going to do, and I think that's a great indication of non-tech stocks, is companies like Ford who are not big into tech, how are they going to perform over the next year? Because if we just look at tech, that's not looking at the entire market.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's another good point. I think that the market is, or like the S&P is really being dragged up by tech AI, and I don't think it's a fair valuation of the market itself. So I personally am a little bit, I mean, surprised or not, I'm bearish. I know that's not really a shocker, but I do just think that we're being like really inflated by tech and AI. And I don't know when the market will go down, but I do think currently we're overvalued.
And my question to you guys, I mean, this like S&P increased to near all-time highs, all these big tech companies that are at all-time highs right now. It's not really followed by the Russell. I mean, the Russell's the smaller for those it's the smaller cap companies. And you can see these smaller companies aren't accelerating in their stock prices as quickly or even at all in comparison to these mega corporations. So my question is, do you guys think like are you bullish or bearish on smaller companies as well, or does your opinion change?
I'm pretty bearish. I think going into the future, as tech continues to grow, I think large corporations are going to become much more liquid, and the smaller companies, small businesses are going to have less of that total market cap to capitalize on. Their market share is going to decrease, and I think going forward, you'll look at the Russell and it won't grow. And I think the top 50 companies are going to continue to make more money, while smaller businesses are going to shrink in market share. Alex, what do you think?
I agree. I think you said it perfectly.
Going into my next question, let's go back to what we were talking about earlier with how AI will affect politics. How do you guys think, especially with the next election coming up, do you think AI is going to have any real big effect on the next election?
I mean, maybe it'll write some campaign speeches like it wrote our essays, but I think that it's too early for politicians to really rely on AI. I think AI might have some insight, but I just don't. I don't know if I would trust AI for predictions or for polls or anything like that. I don't. I don't see too much impact in this one, but I do think in the coming years we'll kind of see like a bigger integration of AI into politics.
I think more specifically, if you get a lot of data on voters and you can understand the insights about them and you can target different segmentations of how to get those voters, I think if AI is able to give those insights into how to attract a certain audience with certain campaign ads or going to certain places, I think a lot of politicians who are using AI might have an advantage over maybe older competitors who aren't using AI. They might have more insights. They might have more data to use against their opponents.
I
Yeah,
think it interesting. Oh,
you,
I think
you
an interesting way to look at it, as well as the last election, we really saw the impact of social media and how like much an election can change based on like how clips surface, for example, on TikTok, and how it's recommended in the algorithm to make people, watch for longer, as well as, maybe change their opinions on certain topics. So I think AI is just getting better and better, which is going to cause elections to be even further uh further controlled by kind of the social media realm. So like companies like Meta, companies like even Snap, because it's even going to like a younger demographic, they're all going to have like a huge effect on elections in the future. And I think AI is going to be the driver behind that.
going back to what Jacob said about like AI kind of having like being able to give strategies or something. I think the problem with our current AI is that it uses data, like past data. And I think that politics and people's opinions are changing constantly. And so you can't really rely on data from a year and a half ago when you need something for now, just because of how changing and how like I don't say volatile, but like just how like chaotic it is. I just don't think our AI can be used at this point.
I think if you have a large enough data set and you look at historical context, like if uh, San Francisco has been historically a Democratic voting city, I think you can assume that it will be later. But why is that? And I think AI can go into that why is that and how independent voters affect the large majority. And if you can influence, maybe a Republican wants to get more Republican voters in San Francisco, AI might be able to identify how you can influence that large population of people. And I think just going into that strategy, AI might have a large effect on political strategy going forward.
I mean, even going even more in depth off of that, I think for individual people, if someone looks up something, for example, they look up like an independent candidate or something like that, those are the voters that can be swayed. Or maybe they look up independent, they're from, a swing state, and they look that up, might even be more swayed. These politicians will really battle it out in terms of amount of money that they can spend on digital advertising and specific advertising to these certain, small group of individuals to change their opinion and therefore like alter the election in a whole. So I think it'll be really interesting, like how AI plays out in the future.
I think another question I have for you guys is how do you guys think that social media and automation is going to change how we vote as a generation? Do you think we'll be more progressive or conservative?
I
I
think oh,
There you go, you go.
I think we're going to be more polarized. So I don't think we're going to be more progressive or more conservative. I think we're going to be more very progressive or very conservative in terms of like opinions. We either lean very much towards one side or lean very much towards the other side. And you're going to really see the people in the middle going to either side, picking a side rather than kind of staying in the middle. I think we're going to see centrists kind of disappear and increase in either party, especially the extremes of both parties.
Yeah, I think Pierce is 100% correct. I mean, the way that all these algorithms work is they just feed you stuff that you like, and I think over time it just gets more and more extreme. Like I know that there's like Republican and Democratic sides on like TikTok, and if you're only fed one side of the story because of the algorithms, you're only going to see one side, and I think that's just going to really like divide our nation. So I think Pierce was 100% right.
I'm going to take the other side and say I agree that we might become more polarized, but I think the person that's going to get the most votes is who's can appeal to the widest sounded like RFK there, who can appeal to the widest audience, and that's going to be centrists and moderate politicians. I think if you have someone who's very Democratic or very Republican, and they can see maybe not every policy that a politician is advocating for, but maybe just a couple, they're more likely to vote for that person, and that person is probably going to be moderate. What do you guys? Do you have any rebuttals to that?
I mean, I think that would only work if they pour just a load of money into it, which is possible. But like I know on TikTok, like people, you only really get one side of it. So for digital ads and stuff like that to really take over, it's gonna take a bunch of time, a bunch of money. But I do see what you're saying, and I do think it's possible. I just think that at least for now, it'll be more polarized.
Yeah, I think in the last election, I mean, we saw a centrist candidate. I would say Joe Biden's more of a Democratic centrist candidate. We saw him get elected, but I don't think like the majority, we're seeing right now, the majority of the nation doesn't approve of President Joe Biden. And I think like in terms of a candidate, I think politicians are starting to realize that you can't really appeal to one side or appeal to the other, or else you're going to appeal to no one. So I think in terms of how people advertise, I think people are going to try to get the biggest group of people to support them. And I don't think that's going to come with centrism now. It's going to come with supporting the far right or far left of each side. And then because the more people, the more voters there are on the far right and far left, those people are going to be the ones that they're going to try to get, and not the people, which is going to get a smaller minority in the middle.
Yeah, I mean, I think post 2016, approval rates have been down for Donald Trump and Joe Biden. And I think, and this just might be me, I think America as a whole just wants someone that we can agree on. I think if there is a political candidate who preferably appeals to both sides and makes rational decisions, if that's with AI or not, I think America will be healthier. But that's just me. But before we wrap it up, do you guys have anything else you want to talk about?
Nothing
No.
for me.
All right. I think that concludes the 10th episode. As we were saying before, close to 100 followers on TikTok. So go to the bio below. If you want to read about my pieces, as Pierce was mentioning earlier, on my Substack, go check that out in the bio. Alex and Pierce's Instagrams are also in the bio, so go check that out. And thank you for listening.